points of the humerus. Side determination points of the humerus. Okay. So see here, this one is a head. Head which faces medially, superior-medially. Head faces superior-medially. Next point, see here, between the two tubercles, there is a presence of groove. So that groove we called as intertubercular groove. Otherwise, it is a intertubercular sulcus. Intertubercular groove, otherwise called as intertubercular sulcus, which faces anteriorly. Okay, which faces anterior. Next, olecranian fossa. Olecranian fossa, which faces posteriorly. Olecranian fossa, which faces posteriorly. Okay. Next, see here in the inferior end. Here there is the presence of two facets. Number one is a round facet. See here, observe this picture. So number one is a round facet. Another one is a pulley shaped facet. Pulley shaped facet we called as prochlea, and round facet we called as capitulum. So capitulum is present in the towards the lateral side. Then prochlea present the medial side. Infero-laterally capitulum. Then infero-medially prochlea. Okay, which faces downwards. Okay, so these are the side determination points. See here, this one is the head, the intertubercular groove or sulcus, and this one is a olecranian fossa, which is present posteriorly. Then round ocular facet is a capitulum. Pulley shaped ocular facet called as prochlea. Are you getting? So just above to the round ocular facet, there is a presence of depressed area called as radial fossa. This radial fossa also which faces anteriorly. Next, above to the prochlea means pulley shaped ocular facet, there is a presence of another depressed area called as conoid fossa. So conoid fossa which also faces anteriorly. So these are the side determination points of the humerus. Okay, now we discuss the parts of the humerus. So parts, see here, it consists of 1, 2, 3 parts. Number 1 is the upper end, number 2 is the lower end, and number 3 is the shaft. Upper end, lower end, shaft. So first we discuss the upper end. Upper end consists of head, neck, two tubercles, intertubercular sulcus. Head, neck, two tubercles, lesser tubercle, greater tubercle, and intertubercular sulcus. So these parts present in the upper end of the humerus. Okay. So now we discuss the head. Head is spiral in shape. It is a spiral shape. So which directed superior-medially, which is articulates with the glenoid cavity. Which is articulates with the glenoid cavity. See here like this. So head is articulates with the glenoid cavity. Then forms a joint IT. S stands for supraspinatus, I stands for infraspinatus, and another one is the T. T stands for teres minor. Are you getting? Then come to the intertubercular sulcus. This intertubercular sulcus, it also called as intertubercular groove, otherwise it called as bicipital groove, otherwise bicipital sulcus. Bicipital sulcus anna, intertubercular sulcus anna, intertubercular groove anna, bicipital groove anna same. So okate Ide royal. Okay. So this intertubercular sulcus consists of three parts. So number one is a medial lip. See here, which one is a medial side here? Head side is a medial. So one is medial lip, LIP lip, medial lip, lateral lip, and floor. Okay, floor, medial lip, lateral lip, and floor. In the medial lip, there is an insertion of in the medial lip. There is an insertion of teres major muscle. Teres major muscle inserted into the medial lip of the intertubercular sulcus. So teres major originates from where? Teres major. So teres major is originates from the which border it is? Lateral border of the scapula. Lower part of the lateral border of the scapula. Here teres major muscle originates from here. Then it runs towards the lateral side. Then finally inserted into the medial lip of the intertubercular sulcus of the humerus. Medial lip of the intertubercular sulcus of the humerus. Are you getting? Next, number two, lateral lip. In the lateral lip, there is an insertion of pectoralis major muscle. Pectoralis major. So pectoralis major muscle originates from the anterior surface of the medial two-thirds of the clavicle and also originates from the sternum, manubrium sternum, body of the sternum up to 6th costal cartilage. It runs towards the lateral side. Then by the twisted manner, like a U-shaped twist, then finally which is inserted into the lateral lip of the intertubercular sulcus of the humerus. Lateral lip of the intertubercular sulcus of the humerus. Okay. Then come to the floor. In the floor, there is an insertion of latissimus dorsi muscle. So latissimus dorsi. So this latissimus dorsi originates from the iliac crest. So it is originates from the iliac crest. See here's the hip bone. So iliac crest. Then some fibers originates from the ribs and some fibers originates from the thoracolumbar fascia. Some fibers originates from the inferior angle of the scapula. Then finally runs towards the above by the twisted manner. Then finally inserted into the floor of the intertubercular sulcus of the humerus. So ఒకసారి డయాగ్రామ్ చూపిస్తాను చూడండి. See here, this one is a latissimus dorsi. Okay, so latissimus dorsi. See here, 1, 2, 3, 4 points. So number one is originates from the ribs and originates from the inferior angle of the scapula and originates from the thoracolumbar fascia and also originates from the iliac crest. Then finally which runs above by the twisted manner. By the twisted manner, then finally inserted into the floor of the intertubercular sulcus of the humerus. Are you getting? Right? Next, come to the inferior end. So upper end and lower end. So lower end and inferior end I'm good enough. Okay. So the lower end, see here, in the lower end there is a presence of two epicondyles, medial epicondyle and lateral epicondyle. See here, observe this picture. Medial epicondyle, lateral epicondyle towards the medial side, that is the medial epicondyle of the humerus. Then lateral side, lateral epicondyle of the humerus. So there is the presence of two epicondyles and there is the presence of two facets. So one facet is like a pulley shaped facet called as trochlea, then round facet called as capitulum. Okay, so lower part consists of medial epicondyle, lateral epicondyle, trochlea, capitulum, olecranian fossa, depressed area, olecranian fossa and radial fossa coronoid fossa, radial fossa, olecranial fossa. So first we discuss the medial epicondyle. In the medial epicondyle, see here like this. Okay, in the medial epicondyle, there is a origination of common origin point of the flexor group muscles of the forearm. So it is a common origin point of the flexor group tendons. See here, this group we called as flexor group. So flexor group muscles originates from the medial epicondyle. Okay. Then in the lateral epicondyle, there is the origination of extensor group muscle originates from the lateral epicondyle. Okay. So medial epicondyle nunchi flexor group muscles. So what are the flexor group muscles? Pronata teres muscle. ఇంకా చాలా మజిల్స్ ఉన్నాయి, అవి మనం ఫోరమ్ లో క్లియర్ గా ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేస్తాను. ఇప్పుడు జస్ట్ ఒకటే పాయింట్ గుర్తుంచుకోండి, ఏంటది? It is a common origin point of the flexor group muscles originates from the medial epicondyle. Then lateral epicondyle. In the lateral epicondyle, there is a common origin point of the extensor group muscles. The extensor group muscles అనేవి lateral condyle నుంచి origin అవుతున్నాయి, medial condyle నుంచి origin అవుతున్నాయి ఏంటి? Flexor group muscles. Okay. Then come to the prochlea. Prochlea is a pulley shaped articular facet. So it is articulates with the see here is the prochlea notch of the ulna. Prochlea notch. So prochlea is a pulley shaped one. Prochlea notch is a depressed area. In the center there is a presence of elevation. Here in the center there is a presence of depression. So this olecrane, this one is a prochlea and this one is a prochlea notch. So this prochlea notch is articulates with the prochlea. Okay. So prochlea is articulates with the trochlea notch of the ulna. Okay. So whenever we done the fully flexion, see here what is this movement? Flexion. Whenever we done the fully flexion of the forearm, see here this is a olecrane. This one is a coronoid process. It is a coronoid process. So whenever we done the fully flexion of the forearm, this coronoid process enters into the coronoid fossa. Coronoid process enters into the coronoid fossa. Whenever we done the fully extension, this one is an extension. Whenever we done the fully extension, this olecranian process, this one is a olecranian process. This one is a olecranian fossa. So this olecranian process enters into the olecranian fossa. The extension, the flexion, coronoid process enters into the coronoid fossa. Then the extension, olecranian process enters into the olecranian fossa. Okay. So see here, this is a prochlea is articulates with the prochlea notch, then forms a joint called as humero-ulnar joint. Forms a joint called as humero-ulnar joint. Are you getting? Next, come to the capitulum. So capitulum is a round-shaped articular facet. It is articulates with the superior articular surface of the head of the radius. It is a superior articular surface of the head of the radius. Then forms a joint called as humero-radial joint. Humero-radial joint. So whenever we done the fully flexion of the forearm, so this head of the radius which is enters into the radial fossa. Radial head is enters into the radial fossa. Are you getting? So this one is a capitulum articulates with the superior articular facet. This superior articular facet of the radius, it is like a concave shaped, disc shaped surface. Concave disc shaped surface which is articulates with the capitulum. Are you getting? Yes. Forms a joint called as humeroradial joint. Are you getting now? Then come to the shaft. Okay now, shaft. In this shaft, see here, there is the presence of borders and surfaces. First one is the anterior border, this is the anterior border, and medial border, lateral border. So, medial epicondyle की पाइन उन्नता medial border. Lateral epicondyle నుంచి line पाइन गीसे, that is the lateral border. Then see here the what is this coronoid fossa. Coronoid fossa నుంచి పైన గీస్తే that is the anterior border. Anterior border, medial border, lateral border. So there is the presence of three borders. Then there is the presence of three surfaces. Shaft, in the shaft there is a presence of three surfaces. See here antero-medial surface, antero-front side, antero-medial surface, anterolateral surface, posterior surface. So any surfaces name? Three. Anteromedial, anterolateral, posterior. So see the picture. See here. Near the lateral supracondylar ridge means line. So see here, this is the lateral supracondyle, lateral epicondyle, lateral epicondyle. So this border is the lateral border. Okay. Then medial border means, see here, this one is the medial border. Medial epicondyle nunchi vastuna border enti medial border. Then anteriorly this border we called as anterior border. Are you getting? So divides into anterolateral, anteromedial and posterior surface. Are you getting now? Next, muscles attachment of the anteromedial and anterolateral surface. In the anteromedial surface, there is an insertion of coracobrachialis muscle. Insertion of coracobrachialis muscle. So coracobrachialis muscle, it is originates from the tip of the coracoid process. Tip of the coracoid process is originates from the tip of the coracoid process. See here, this one is a tip. So tip of the coracoid process. Coracobrachialis originates from the tip of the coracoid process, runs downwards, then finally inserted into the anteromedial surface of the center of the shaft. Anteromedial surface of the center of the shaft. Are you getting? Next, anteromedial and anterolateral surface, there is an origination of brachialis muscle. Origination of brachialis muscle. So brachialis muscle originates from the anteromedial, anterolateral surface of the lower part of the shaft of the humerus. It runs downwards, then finally which is inserted into the ulnar tuberosity. Ulnar tuberosity on the ulnar tuberosity ki insertion. Origin nunchi anteromedial and anterolateral surface of the shaft of the humerus. Okay. Then see here in the lateral border, the center of the shaft, there is a presence of V-shaped tuberosity called as deltoid tuberosity. So deltoid muscle inserted here. So actually deltoid muscle consists of three types of fibers: anterior fibers, acromial fibers, posterior fibers. Anterior fibers, acromial fibers, posterior fibers, finally they inserted into the deltoid tuberosity. Are you getting? So So delta tuberosity present where? In the lateral border of the shaft of the humerus. Okay, then come to the posterior surface. So posterior surface, in the posterior surface there is a presence of depressed area. See here, depressed area. That area we called as spiral groove. So see here, the depressed area. So this depressed area called as spiral groove. In the spiral groove, above to the spiral groove, there is a presence of lateral head of the triceps muscle. The lateral head. చూడండి ఇట్లా ఉంది కదా. Which one is the lateral? This one is the lateral. This one is the medial. అంతే కదా. ఇట్లా ఉన్నప్పుడు ఇది lateral, ఇది medial. So lateral head is originates from here. Medial head is originates from here. In between these two heads, there is a presence of depressed area called as spiral groove, otherwise called as radial groove. Spiral groove అనొచ్చు, లేకపోతే radial groove అనొచ్చు. ఎందుకని radial groove అనాలి? Because radial nerve passes through this groove. That's why we call here radial groove. Okay, otherwise spiral. Spiral means round. Round groove present in between the medial head and lateral head of the triceps. That's why we call here the spiral groove. So what are the contents present in the spiral groove? See here, one artery and one nerve passes through this groove. So what is that nerve? Radial nerve. Radial nerve passes through the spiral groove, and another one is the artery, arteria profunda brachii. So what is that? Arteria profunda brachii. Profunda brachial artery and arteria profunda brachii are same. So passes through the spiral groove. Are you getting? Yes. Near the surgical neck of the humerus, there is a presence of anterior and posterior circumflex vessels. Anterior and posterior circumflex vessels. Circumflex అంటే రౌండ్ గా తిరిగే vessels. So round గా దేని చుట్టూ తిరుగుతున్నాయి? Surgical neck. అందుకని surgical neck is a dangerous neck. So because so many blood vessels present here. So అందుకని ఇది surgical point కూడా ఇక్కడే ఉంటుంది. Okay? Are you getting? Right? Any doubts? So upper end, lower end, shaft. Okay? So muscle origin insertions. Sit muscles. Then tell me the sit muscle insertion point. Sit. What is sit? Supraspinatus. Infraspinatus. Teres minor. Very good. So in the medial lip of the intertubercular surface, which muscle is attached? Insertion in teres major. Then in the lateral lip, pectoralis major. In the floor, latissimus dorsi. So in the floor, latissimus dorsi, in the groove there is a long head of the biceps passes through this groove. Long head of the biceps muscle, that tendon passes through this groove. Okay, so that's why we call here bicipital groove. Okay, are you getting? Yes. So find out Jasara. Come on. Show me the olecranian fossa. Very good. Pakka ammaiki ichesi. Coronoid fossa. Which one? Very good. Muscle. In the floor there is an insertion of latissimus dorsi. Through this bicipital groove there is a one tendon passes through this groove. That tendon is a long head of the biceps. Identify the lesser tubercle. Lesser tubercle ఎక్కడ ఉంది చూపించండి. Don't make noise. Now today we discuss the shaft of the humerus. So shaft of the humerus, there is a presence of 3 borders and 3 surfaces. So number 1 is the anterior border. See here, this one is the anterior border. and towards the medial side there is a medial border. Towards the left side there is the presence of lateral border. So it consists of three borders and three surfaces. See here, number one is the anteromedial surface, anterolateral surface, posterior surface. Okay. Now we discuss the muscle attachment of the surfaces. In the anterior surface, see here, the anteromedial and anterolateral surface, these two surfaces, anteromedial and anterolateral surface, there is an origination of brachialis muscle. So brachialis originates from the anteromedial and anterolateral surface of the shaft of the humerus. So this brachialis muscle runs downwards, then finally which is inserted into the ulnar tuberosity. See here, this one is a ulna, the ulnar tuberosity. In the ulnar tuberosity it is inserted. Okay, that is a brachialis muscle. So brachialis muscle originates from where? Anteromedial and anterolateral surface, lower part of the anteromedial, anterolateral surface of the shaft of the humerus. So it runs downwards, finally inserted into the ulnar tuberosity, present in the ulna. Are you getting? Next. So see here, near the medial border, in the center of the shaft, near the medial border, there is an insertion of coracobrachialis muscle. So coracobrachialis muscle originates from where? Tip of the coracoid process. So it runs downwards, finally inserted into the anteromedial surface near the medial border. In the center, it is the center of the shaft. It is inserted. Are you getting? Next, come to the towards the lateral side. Near the lateral border, there is a presence of tuberosity called as deltoid tuberosity. In the deltoid tuberosity, there is an insertion of deltoid muscle. So deltoid muscle, it consists of how many fibers? Three types of fibers. Anterior fibers originates from the anterior border of the lateral 1/3 of the clavicle. Then acromion fibers originates from the lateral border of the acromion process, is the lateral border of the acromion process, and posterior fibers originates from the lower lip of the spinous process of the scapula. So these three fibers runs downwards, finally inserted into the deltoid tuberosity, which is present towards the lateral border side. Are you getting? Next, come to the posterior surface. In the posterior surface, see here, the posterior surface subdivides into two parts, upper part and lower part, by the oblique sulcus. So that one we called as radial groove, otherwise called as spiral groove. Radial groove, otherwise it called as spiral groove. In the radial groove, there is a passing of the two structures. Number one is a radial nerve, another one is a arteria profunda brachii artery. Arteria profunda brachii artery passes through this groove. So this groove present in between the two heads of the triceps muscle. Present in between the two heads of the triceps muscle. That head is, number one is the lateral head of the triceps and medial head of the triceps. In between these two heads, there is a presence of oblique shaped, round shaped, depressed area. So that groove we called as radial groove, otherwise called as spiral groove. Are you getting? So this is the posterior surface. In the posterior surface, we write the two muscles. So means only one muscle, two heads. So number one is the lateral head of the triceps, another one is the medial head of the triceps. Are you getting? Right? Then come to the crust. Medial crust and lateral crust. See here, the medial crust See here, this is a medial supracondylar ridge. Dinavali, medial supracondylar ridge. See here, this one, medial supracondylar ridge, and this one we called as lateral supracondylar ridge. In the medial supracondylar ridge, there is the origination of humeral head of the pronator teres muscle. Humeral head of the pronator teres. Actually, pronator teres, it consists of two heads. Number one is a humeral head, and number two is the ulnar head. So humeral head originates from the medial supracondylar ridge. Okay. Then come to the lateral supracondylar ridge. See here, this part we called as lateral supracondylar ridge. The lateral supracondylar ridge upper part, there is the origination of brachioradialis muscle. Brachioradialis muscle originates from the upper part of the supracondylar ridge. Which supracondylar ridge? Lateral supracondylar ridge. So this one is a brachioradialis. So this brachioradialis originates from the lateral supracondylar ridge. And this one is a lateral supracondylar ridge. It runs downwards up to the styloid process of the radius. Up to the styloid process. See here, this one is a styloid process. So it runs downwards, then inserted here like this. See here. Okay, it is originates from here, runs downwards, inserted into the styloid process. So this one we called as brachioradialis muscle, origin and insertion. Origin, upper part of the supracondylar ridge. Which supracondylar ridge? Lateral supracondylar ridge. It runs downwards, then passes through the forearm, then finally inserted into the styloid process of the radius. Are you getting? Next, come to the lower part of the supracondylar ridge, lateral supracondylar ridge. There is the origination of extensor carpi radialis muscle. Extensor carpi radialis muscle. This muscle also runs downwards, then passes beneath the extensor retinaculum. What is meant by extensor retinaculum? It is like a band. It is like a band. It passes beneath the band. So that fibrous band we called as flexor retinaculum here. So and backside that is a extensor retinaculum. So this muscle is a flexor, right? So this muscle is a extensor anama, flexor anama ikkada. So this one is a extensor carpi radialis longus. So extensor carpi radialis longus muscle runs downwards, then passes beneath the extensor retinaculum, then finally which is inserted into the second, see here, which is inserted into the second metacarpal. These are the carpals, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These 5 bones are metacarpals. So each metacarpal there is a presence of 3 parts. So number 1 is a base. See here, this part is a base, and this part we called as shaft, and this part we called as head. This is a head, and this one is a shaft, and this one is a base. So finally, where it is inserted, extensor carpi radialis longus, which is inserted into the base of the second metacarpal bone, dorsal surface, surface. It is the palmar surface, and this one is a dorsal surface, which is inserted into the dorsal surface. Are you getting? So these are the muscles originates and inserted into the shaft of the humerus. Yes? Have any doubts? Okay. Next, we discuss the radius and ulna today. Today we discuss the radius and ulna.